Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kellie's Bead Boutique. So a few years back on one of my Facebook Lives, I created this really unique and very trendy looking leather bracelet, and it's a 5-wrap bracelet. And everybody really loved it. And I've always had a kit on my website, but people don't ever really buy it because it's on a Facebook Live and you can't see how to make it because you know the quality in those things were terrible. So I decided that I'm going to remake that because I think you guys are going to really like this one. So if you want to see how I make it, come and join me. Alrighty, well it's 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday and I haven't quite engaged my brain. So let's hope that I can get this to all work. So you can see that I pretty much have the entire store here. There's lots of parts, but this will make sense once I get going along here. So we are going to be using a little bit of GS Hypo cement today. I have two different sizes of leather. I have 3mm and 2mm. You'll get to choose the color of your leather. You can see I'm going to be using the antique gray today, but I have the antique black on mine, so they look good with all of the colors. I have some 10mm matte ebony wood, some nice little Czech glass rondelles, and I have some beautiful tiara cast parts here, including one of their rings, the Amore button on one of their little charms, and some little nuggets. And I also have these little sort of crystally bling spacers. I think these go lovely with a little bit of wood. I have a couple different sizes of jump rings, and then I have these 3mm crimp pins. Now these ones are a little different than what I normally use in my videos, in that these ones are made in Israel and the quality is just exceptional. Not that the other ones aren't, but I just particularly love the look of these ones. They are a lot more pricey, but they are just beautiful, and I've been wearing this bracelet now for probably 3 years and they really hold up. So we have 4 of those. I also have a head pin with a ball on the end, and of course my barrel knot tube, and I can't remember if I already said, because again, like it's 7:30 and my brain's not awake yet, some 20 gauge titanium wire. And then we have our 4 basic tools. We have our cutters and our chain nose pliers, our round nose pliers, and our bent chain nose pliers. So let's see if I can turn this old brain on and get this thing made. Alrighty, so again, I probably should have a pair of scissors, but you know, I just never have scissors with me. If I do, oh my goodness, I actually did think about them and then forgot to bring them. So actually I see a pair on the table here. I'm going to reach across and I'm going to grab them. Ta-da! Do I get an award? Even though they're ugly and kind of crappy looking, but they were sitting on the table. So I'm going to take my 3mm leather and I'm going to cut that in half. I have about 34 inches of leather here. Now this is one of those bracelets that's, it's not difficult to size, but it's going to have to be sized to your wrist. So I will give you plenty of leather so that even if you have a large wrist, like I have a 7.5 inch wrist, and this is plenty to go around. Okay, so now that I've got my leather cut, I want to make sure that I'm following the natural sort of drape of the leather. You can see how the leather is kind of draping down this way versus, like, I don't want to have it going this way, because this is going to be the way it's going to go on my wrist, and I don't want to fight against that. So I'm going to take one of these crimp pins and I'm going to place it on the end, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at the loop this way. I don't want to have the loop turning like that because then it's going to be the wrong way. So I want to have it like that. And then there's so much stuff here. It's hopefully you guys are going to be able to see, because there is a lot of stuff. So I'll try to scoosh some things over so that we have a clear spot here. So you can see how I can see the leather just on the end there. So what I like to do is just kind of pull it back just ever so slightly so I can't really see the leather there. Now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I want to come right in the middle section. So I never want to crimp down where these little dots are. I'm going to go right in the mid section. And right before I crimp, I pull back on that leather again to make sure it's not poking through. I mean, if it pokes through a little bit, nobody's ever going to see it. But I just like to make sure that you don't see it. So you can see I gave it a good little smush there. And now I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to repeat on the opposite side. So I just do it a couple times. You don't want to go crazy and smush this thing like nuts because it is metal, and metal can break. So you want to make sure that you're only doing it a couple times. You don't need any glue. They're super secure. I love these parts. So we're going to do that on the other side too. Like, so not on this end and other end, on the other piece. You don't want to finish the other end quite yet. Okay, so now if that is a little blunt looking, you can take your scissors and just kind of trim that up. I did cut this with a pair of flush cutters, which makes it look not so nice. So you can see how that completely changes the end there. So I'm going to take my crimp end, I'm going to put it on, and I push it sort of so I can see the leather, and then I put my chain nose pliers over top, I pull back that leather right before I crimp, and I kind of smush down. So again, smush being the very technical term. Okay, I just like to make sure that's in there nice and snug. So now I have 2 pieces of leather with a crimp end on either end. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of my wire, and I'm probably going to take about 8 inches of wire. I will make sure that I give you lots of wire so that you won't have any problems with length. Just going to get that out of the way because we have too many parts on this table. Okay, so I'm going to go down about a good 2 inches on this, and I'm going to be doing a bulky wrap again today because I want to have something a little bulkier looking. So I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to press away so that I'm making like an upside down L. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers, let's get rid of that because we don't need that for a while, and I'm going to go about halfway up my barrel of my round nose pliers. So I need enough to be able to get over the end of these loops, and they're a little bit on the heavier side, and I want to have a little bit of a bigger look, so somewhere around the halfway mark. So now I'm going to take that end and I'm going to go up and over and down, and now I'm going to open my plier and I'm just going to rotate it so that it's parallel to the table. Now I'm going to take that tail and pull it straight back, and then I just have a look and make sure that it's all kind of, you know, nice and neat. And that's what I'm looking for, is kind of like a little circle with an arm stuck out to it. So now I'm going to take one of these ends. Again, just too much stuff here. I really apologize if you can't see. I had to put so much out here. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to go through the end, and I always just kind of take my nail and just sort of open that up as I pull it through. And now I'm going to create my wrap. So I want to make sure that I take my chain nose pliers and go right across that entire piece there. I don't want to try to just scrimp and go like this because you will bend that nice little loop that you've made. So now I'm going to lock that in there nice and tight, and I'm going to wrap around once, twice, and I'm going to start on my third, and then as I go on my third, I'm going to start on my way back up. Now if this turns out really messy, then it doesn't matter, because that's what we're kind of going for, is a messy, bulky wrap. And you can kind of just stop wherever you want, and then I think that looks perfect. So now I'm going to take the flush side of my cutter, so I'm going to turn those over. I'm going to come in on top, and I always cover it because that will go flying. Get that little piece. And then now you can see we've got our little burr there. So I'm going to take the tip of my pliers on the tip of that burr, and I'm going to give it a little smush down. Now I said on one of my last videos to make sure that you've got that in your opposite hand, like I'm right-handed, so I'm going to have it in my left hand with the wires coming towards me like that. That way I can naturally just take my pliers and go right on the end there. And now you can see we have a nice little wrap. So now I'm just going to kind of straighten that out, and I'm going to put on my sequence of beads. Now you want to make sure that this kind of just goes on the top of your wrist. If you've got a teeny tiny wrist and this goes all the way around, it may not look nice. So you can always reconfigure this. You could leave out a wood bead or whatever you like, but I kind of like when it just sort of sits right on top. So, and because again, everybody has different size wrists, I can't really tell you what sequence to do it in, except that this is what I used. So you can follow along, and if you don't mind it being a little bit off to the side, that's fine. And I'm going to show you a little trick to do with this after too. So, all right, so the first thing we're going to do, I have to find everything now, is we're going to take one of these little sort of nuggets, and that's just going to help sort of seat this whole thing. If I was just to put wire straight into the end of this little bit of a blingy spacer, it kind of rolls around too much, and you can't get in there to make it just doesn't fit in. So you have to have something to sort of stop that little hole there. So I'll put one of those on, and then now I'm going to put on one of my spacers, and then one of my pieces of wood, and a spacer, and then one of the rondelles. I keep looking at my wrist because I'm like, what did I do? I made this one so long ago. But I love it. You can see on my leather, I have worn this to death. It's my favorite bracelet. I wear it all the time. You've probably never seen me wear it in a video because I didn't want anybody saying, make that, because I wanted to hold on to it for just a little bit. Okay, so we're just doing our little sequence. And again, you can change this up. And then we're going to end with, whoops, I have to put one more little blingy spacer on, and then our little nugget. So you can see how we've got our nice little row of beads there. And I really love wood with sparkle. I just think it looks so pretty. Okay, so now I want to have a look at how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to hold it in this direction, and so that I've got my loops going in, so I can look down at it this way. It's just easier for me to show you this way than that way. So I'm going to have it like this, which means I'm going to now take this and bend it straight across, because I want my loops going in the same direction. Okay, so now I don't want to have a neck, so that's why I just bent it across. So I'm going to go back to the same position that I did that other loop in, and I'm going to go up and over and down, open those pliers, rotate them so they're parallel to the table. See, parallel is the only word that I know. I don't know what perpendicular is. All right, so now I'm going to take that and pull it straight to the back, and then I'm going to just sort of straighten that out a little bit. Now, before you wrap, this is where usually most people go wrong. You want to make sure that you take your other end. So please don't wrap your end before you put it in the other crimp end. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough wire. So make sure you take some time. Everybody gets excited. They want to get it finished, and then they go, uh-oh, I didn't add my wire. So, all right, so make sure you do that. And now we're going to wrap it up just like we did before. So get a good grip on that loop, wrap around, go down a couple times, and you probably won't get 3, you may only get 2, and that's perfectly fine. If anybody is that close to your wrist and they're measuring those or counting them, that would be a bit crazy. So we won't worry about how many wraps we've got. We just want to have that nicely covered. Okay, so now we're going to come in again with the flush part. I'm sorry if I'm being silly today. I didn't sleep at all last night, and so that's why I came here at the ridiculous hour that I did to do this video. Okay, so we'll get that kind of smushed down there. So now we have our little bit in the middle. So now you can see, I mean, this has got a little bit of a bend just because I've been working with it, but our wrists are not flat. They actually have a bit of a slight curve to them. So what I like to do is give them sort of that natural curve. I just sort of bend that with my fingers, and now you can see when it sits on top of the wrist, it's going to have that little bit of a bend in there. So that just gives it a really nice finished look. Okay, so now we are going to work on the other end. So now, again, this is the hardest part for me to explain how to measure. So I will tell you how I did mine. So my wrist is 7.5 inches. So the entire length of this piece minus my end pieces here is 37 inches. This little piece that I'm going to be creating down here is about 2 inches long. And you might think, well, if your wrist is 37 and then you're adding that, that's going to be huge. Well, not really, because I don't like my bracelets tight. I like to have them on the loose side. So the measurement that I have minus this is really about 37, and then I've added these 2 pieces in here. So I've got about 37 inches of continual pieces. Like if I take this and measure this entire piece out, it's about 37 inches long. And then this little bit that I'm going to add in here is about 2. And that seems to work out perfect for mine. But what I will suggest is that you take yours, I'll see if I can do it on my right hand, and you're going to wrap it around your wrist twice. And it's going to be impossible to do here. And then wrap it around your wrist twice on the other side. And then where you want it to land, you see how I've got one sort of on just on the inside of my wrist here, and then the other one just on the inside of my wrist here. So you see you need a bit of a gap there. And that's sort of where you're going to measure. Now I know this is completely unscientific, and I really honestly did try to come up with a method for measuring. But I just sort of figured that you're going to take about 5 times your wrist size, reduce it by about maybe an inch, and then add this on. And you can always add extra jump rings if it ends up too small. It's really hard. The measuring on bracelets is my least favorite part to explain because everybody's wrist is a different size, and I really can't tell you how big it should be. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense because this is going to go around 5 times. Okay, so now let's finish up the end. So I'm now going to take my little crimps and I'm going to place them on the end, again going with the natural flow of the leather, and then we'll just get that back on the end there. Okay, so we want to follow that natural drape. It's going that way, so I want to have my loop going in this direction. So just kind of push it down so you see the leather. Right before you crimp it, just pull that leather back a bit and then give it your little smushes. and then you're going to repeat on the opposite side. There we go. All right, so let's make our clasp. Okay, so now we're going to create our clasp using our little piece of leather, which is about 10 inches, and our little ring. So I'm going to just run that through, and I want to offset it by about probably that much. So let's see, that's maybe 1, 2, 3 inches, and then leave the rest on the top. Okay, so now I'm going to take my barrel knot tube, and I'm going to go around here once, twice, and then go through the back end and pull that through. And then I'm going to sort of squish that up with my fingers and then pull that tight. Okay, now what we're doing is we're creating a knot that's big enough for our button to go through. So I just want to sort of have a guesstimate of where I'm going to go. So I need my loop to be about that big. Now you don't want to make this so tight because you can see mine has been really worn down because you're taking it off and on and off and on. So you want to make sure that it's not too tight. So I know that I need to make my next loop about here. So I am going to just flip that over because I've got this is my little bit longer piece. So I want to make sure I'm using that. So I'm going to place this in between. I'm going to go around once, twice. Normally I go 3 times, but on this one you can go twice. And then I want to make sure that I'm going through this back end of the leather. If you can see a little piece of leather over top of your knot, then you know that you've gone the wrong way. You can see how that goes right through the middle of the leather and not over top of it. So that's just a little hint for barrel knots. So now this one can take a little bit of finagling to make sure that you're in the right place because we don't have very much leather. I will probably give you a little more because it is easier to work with a little more leather. So now I've got that sort of made about the right size, I think, but I'm just going to sort of tuck that in there. Now that's a little snug, so I'm going to pull that down a bit before I tighten it up. And there we go, that's just about perfect. So what I like to do to make sure that this isn't going to move is I take my thumbnail and I just place it here. Now I'm not pushing down because I don't want to wreck my leather, but all I'm doing is using this like a bit of a brace. So when I'm tightening it up, I'm pushing against my nail, and that really just helps lock that in there nice and tight. Okay, so that's what we're going to create. Now we're going to take a little bit of GS Hypo glue. All right, I'm having challenges with my glue. I picked it up and tried to get some of the crusty parts off there, and it's not working. So I'm just going to pretend that this is working properly, but it totally isn't. Oh goodness. So I'm going to take just a little bit of glue and I'm going to just pop it here because I want to reinforce that. And then I'm going to go right on that side because this is the part of your bracelets that's going to take the most punishment. All right, so I'm not using a lot of glue, just a little bit. And we're just going to let that dry. Once that's dry, I'm then going to take my scissors and I'm just going to trim off that little bit. So let's complete this bracelet. So I'm going to now make my little dangle. So I'm going to use one of my Czech glass rondelles and one of my little blingy spacers and then my last little nugget. And you'll see when it goes inside there, it just kind of seats in there and makes it a little bit easier to do your wrap. So I'm just going to bend my wire straight on the top there because I don't want to have any neck. And I'm going to create a loop, and I don't need a super huge loop, so I'm just going to go up and over and down, rotate my pliers, bring that to the back, and then I'm probably going to need my bent chain nose pliers because this is just a little bit of a smaller wire. So again, we're just going to make sort of a messy wrap, bring that around a few times, and it's a good thing it can be messy. It doesn't really matter on this one. Okay, so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim that off. So now I just want to come in with this little burr and give that a little tuck down. We don't want to ever have anything sharp poking out on our jewelry. Okay, so now we can assemble the rest of this bracelet. Okay, so I'm going to be placing my button on one end. So I want to make sure that my button has lots of flexibility. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using small jump rings. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and put them on one side and then my bent chain nose on the other, and open it up like that, and I'm going to run it through the end, turn those over, and then just do that up. And you want to just kind of jiggle it until it's closed. Now you can see I have a really good strong hand grip on these tools. You'll often have a hard time with these stronger gauge ones, or heavier gauge ones I should say, if you don't hold onto your tools correctly. So I want to make sure that you're holding onto your tools properly. Don't be sipping tea and holding it like that because you don't have any strength. Make sure that you've got a good strong hand grip on your tools. Now I'm going to take number 2 and open that up and run that through. And some people ask me, well, why don't you just put it on the first one when you're doing it up? Well, these jump rings, when they come, they're not fully closed, so you can't really do that. I like to make sure that each jump ring is nicely closed, so I can only do that by manipulating it open and close myself. All right, so I'm going to open this last one. And so that's going to give us a nice bit of length and flexibility. So now I'm going to run that on one end of my leather, so it doesn't really matter which end you choose. Just make sure that's done up nice and tight. So when it's on, you don't see those jump rings. This is the look that you get. Okay, so now on the other end, we're going to take one of our large jump rings, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to open that up, go across, put that through the end, and then put that through the ring. And I want to make sure that this one is done up nice and tight. So just jiggle it back and forth until you sort of hear it click, and you want to make sure that you can see no gaps and that it's nice and straight and flat in between there. So now I am going to take another one of my large jump rings, and I'm going to run it through my little decorative charm here and attach that and do that up nice and tight. And you can see this is going to make a really pretty finish on here. And then I'm going to repeat with my little charm that I made. It doesn't matter which side you put it on. It's your piece. You can do whatever you like. So there you go. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to put this on. So what I do is I just place all the pretty part on top, and I go around once, twice, and then I kind of grab hold of that with my fingers, and then I'm going to repeat on the opposite side. And then I'm going to take that little leather clasp and I just run it right over top of the button, and that's our little clasp on here. And then what I do is I usually just kind of take my fingers and kind of do this, and it sort of evens everything out. I just kind of put everything where it's supposed to go. And you will have a crossover at some point in there, but look how pretty that looks on there. Now I do get a lot of questions. People ask me, well, what is that all on your skin? Well, this is years and years of being in the sun, and I'm a redhead, naturally, not anymore. And having such fair skin has given me all these precancerous lesions, and they're not very pretty. I try to conceal them, and I'm embarrassed by them, but you know what? It's part of who I am, so I'm letting them hang out in all their glory today. So I usually cover it up as best I can so you don't see that part, but you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. So there you go. So I hope you really enjoyed this one. This is the one I made today with the antique gray. This is the one that I always wear, which is in the black. There will be 4 different colors that you can choose. There'll be the metallic silver, and I think there's an antique brown. Any color would look fabulous. There will be a kit available. You just go into the drop down part of the menu into the description, and you'll have a link right directly to my secure website. I get these orders out usually within at least 1, if not 2 days. I'm very, very fast at fulfilling your orders, and I want to thank everybody that's been helping the store during this really tough time. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It's one of my all-time favorite bracelets. I think it will be yours, and I think your friends are going to love it if you need to make gifts for people. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give me a thumbs up, give me a little bit of a like, and leave me a comment and tell me which color you think you're going to make yours in. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.